Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability. I am so honored today to have two gentlemen with me who are movers and shakers in the Valley, know a lot of what's going on in the auto industry and in various areas there. And so you've worked with Gentry, Destination,
I write for a lot of lifestyle magazines, and that's
and
fun.
Brian Douglas and Chris Novak, so yes. And so tell us what you do.
All right, let me start from the beginning because you wanted a little bit of CV or biography.
Background,
I started out, I started doing my career the hard way, and by that I mean I started in automotive technology. I was technical service manager of a major company that manufactured automotive components, and then a product manager for another company.
Here in California?
No,
or?
back east, where they really do that.
In Michigan?
Actually in Chicago, and then in New Haven, Connecticut, of all places. And then I was back in Chicago. I moved to the marketing side and worked for
the dark side.
Yes, well, it was a light side compared to an automotive radiator factory.
Okay, yeah.
But I worked for Marsteller Inc. and some other major agencies in Chicago, worked my way back here, and finally got into the journalism business by default. It was one of those things where I had been writing. I didn't like the kind of reporting that I heard about the automotive business because it wasn't correct. So a friend of mine at KGO radio back in those days said, well, why don't you do it? So that's what I started doing. And then when the broadcast business got a little funny, which it does, went to newspapers, was automotive editor at the Examiner, and then Marin Independent Journal, and then finally lifestyle magazines, where I'm at now. So that's that
And
whole
the newspaper business got a little funny too, right?
It sure did.
Yeah, and
yes.
it's I keep saying that, okay, I'm never going to read my laptop in the bathtub or
That's
in the hot
right.
tub, right?
Good
You still
idea.
need the paper. So you need the books, you need the hardbound books and the paper, and as I understand it, it's actually right now paper industry for books and printing is on the uptick.
Well, it is, and it's interesting. If it's like any other media business, if you serve your readers or your viewers or your audience properly, there's a market. And if you don't do that, and I think that many of the major newspapers didn't react very well. I mean, when I was in a meeting years ago when the internet just started, 94, 95, the commercial internet, I was in a meeting and our publisher actually made the zany statement when I said, hey, we need a website. And he said, we're in the newspaper business, not the internet business. And I thought, wow, sounds like Alexander Graham Bell getting chewed out. We're in the telegraph business, We don't want these telephone things, there's no future there. So the better properties have done both and done them well. So
Which is really
that's
good.
how that works.
And Chris, welcome back. You've been on the show before.
Great to be here, Heather.
And I love the beach. I feel like we're going to have to go to the boardwalk after this. You look great. I want to steal that shirt from my fiance. Right. It's an awesome shirt. Tell us, for folks that don't know, tell us a little bit about your history and what you do. And
Sure.
You kind of do everything.
Yeah, so I've had a varied and colorful career, a lot of pivots actually. So I started off as an aerospace engineer working on Navy jets and helicopters, and then I went to as an automotive engineer, worked at Delco Remy on batteries and charging systems. Little did I realize that the two would come and merge together, right? I could have been on the cutting edge.
But you are on the cutting edge.
I thank you, yes.
Yes,
So from there I went to law school and then went into tech, working corporate and intellectual property. Went into life sciences thereafter, and then started this electric vehicle club, Electric Vehicle Entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley, evesv.org. We're up to 1,200 members now. We've got monthly lunch meetings, makes it very convenient for people. Usually all you can
And
eat.
we're going to get into that in a minute. And
Good.
I actually forgot to pull up the first slide, so we're going to pull up the first slide because that'll segue into WAJ. And so this first slide that's Laguna Seca, early morning breakfast, and we're getting the flags, the safety check.
We put together 26 years ago, a few colleagues and I started a journalist organization.
Well, and hold on one second. For the folks that are looking at the slide, that's me without hair and makeup.
That's right.
And looking like a little tomboy, and that's you. And on the right side of the screen are things that I test drove both on and off track. And now we can pull that down and people can see your beautiful face.
So we started this organization of automotive reporters, and back then it was mostly people that reviewed new cars for a living. I still do that today. It's a fun gig to do. You know,
And the name of it is Western Automotive, Journalist, which is
yes.
WAJ, WAJ.org.
Yes, and we the slide you had up was an annual event that we produce that allows journalists to test cars in a controlled environment at Laguna Seca Raceway, in this case.
And also on road.
That's right.
And
we do it both. We have a 2.5-day event is what it's morphed into. And in the future, this may change with autonomous vehicles where we'll get driven around the track and then, you know, look at and interact with autonomous vehicle suppliers on the ground.
Which is great. And the road part is usually Monterey to Carmel, Quail Lodge, and you had an off-road thing too.
It's
which
an
I did once,
amazing
yeah.
facility, Quail Lodge in the middle of Carmel Valley. Here's this beautiful golf course, and it looks like, you know, any other nice high-zoot resort. And obviously there's nice roads around there to drive on. They actually have about a 2-mile off-road facility right there that you'd never believe. It looks like part of the golf course.
And this last year, I waited too long. I went at 3 o'clock to try to get it, but it was raining. It was raining cats and dogs, and they closed it because it was too mudded out.
Why would
right?
you close that?
That's so
That's
fun.
the fun of
Yeah.
off-road.
Well,
is
I
slip
think
and
at 4
slide
o'clock
around.
was the actual hard, so they only had an hour left, and I think people were getting stuck though. So you know, had to
Well, and
get
we
the
had
tire ironers out.
Newbies.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'm going to pull up another slide because there's another one with the other WAJ event, and this is the Silicon Valley Reinvents the Wheel.
Well, the Automotive Technology Conference was started
And
later.
and hold on one second. So before we go there, just to let people know, the top, I forget the gentleman's name, but this is a autonomous vehicle like a bus on the top left side. The right side, I believe, is a hydrogen. And
Hydrogen
the
fuel cell
top,
car.
and then the bottom is a kind of infrared technology that one of the autonomous vehicle companies uses. And then the left side is the Autonomy of Things founder, Wolfgang, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, and we could pull that down. And go ahead, sorry.
Well, what happens with this conference, our organization, there are other automotive press organizations. We're lucky enough to be here in the middle of Silicon Valley, and because of that, the automotive dynamic, and we'll talk about that, has changed quite a bit, the landscape. So now you have every major automaker and every major tier 1 supplier. And tier 1, these are the people that supply, you know, major components to build cars. All have laboratories and development facilities here in this, and I say here, Silicon Valley now encompasses pretty much the Bay Area. But the dead center of it, where we have this conference, is in Mountain View. And the neat thing about this, it'll be this October 1st, again this year.
And it's always October.
It
sometime
is.
in October.
It has been. And the cool thing about the conference is we've got a facility. We take over the entire Computer History Museum. So we have 12,000 square feet of exhibit and auditorium space on the second floor, and then the entire parking and road area out in front of it. And this is right next to Waymo, Google. So it's an area that people are pretty familiar with, and we have a place to actually have
And there's actually
20
a
cars.
science fair that goes on at the
Yes,
same time.
exactly.
So the latest in technology with any of the companies in the Valley will be there in the kind of side room. And then there's talks, and yeah, it's a,
We have a
it's a good
number of
event.
presentations. We have gourmet food trucks for everyone. It's a really fun event.
I'm hoping to get the waffle truck back again.
And I think that we average about 300 executives, from a range of
Different
companies.
companies.
So it's
From
quite
the
good.
battery companies to NVIDIA. We have
Exactly.
different companies. How many journalists are part of WAJ?
We have 80 members approximately.
And it's a nonprofit.
It is, absolutely. Yeah, we're a 501, I don't think C3, but H3 or whatever.
501c6 or something.
C6, I
And
think
how
you're
does
right.
one become a member of it?
Well, if you write about, or write, I'm a writer, so I say if you write broadcast,
Or film?
or talk about the automotive industry to an audience that it can't be a blog spot where it's only your immediate family and close friends, but if you cover the industry as a journalist, you're a member. We've expanded that to include people that cover technology, where automotive is an important part of their beat. So, for instance, the technology editor of the LA Times is based up here, and he covers obviously Google and Apple and Intel, and those people, sure, they're in the automotive business now as well. So
The finding journalists to join, how do you go about that?
couple of ways. The technology conferences helped a lot. People find us, and then members like yourself.
So CES,
and sure.
NAB, National
Exactly.
Association of Broadcasters, and the other ones, yeah.
And so it's a matter of networking. It's all a business of relationships, and so it's also that great internet has solved a lot of problems that used to take a lot of footwork. So you can go to various major media, find out who's on the beat, and then invite them in.
And we're going to come back to that in a minute. So Chris, we're going to talk about electric EV, Electric Vehicle Entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley. Tell us about it.
Sure. So
tell us some more about it.
okay, we'll
And
pick
turn
up.
your phone off, please.
Yes, deal.
I'm going to smack you.
Okay. So we started this in 2010, so we've been around about 8 years. Started off.
So just 2010? I thought it was longer than that.
No, it seems like longer
Yeah.
sometimes, but when you're running the whole gig, it takes a lot of effort. But we've got a great staff of volunteers here and our officers. We're up to
You have
about 12.
10, 12? Okay.
We've got actually 8 officers
Okay.
and a technical advisory board of 3
Okay.
very smart gentlemen. We've been around 8 years. We started off with just first meeting of 20 people. We're up to 1,200 folks now.
And you meet once a month on Thursdays?
Correct. Usually the third Thursday of the month,
Okay.
we've got a lunch speaker, and we host it usually at a restaurant, so you can have your all-you-can-eat Indian buffet cuisine.
I love the Indian food thing. I'm so
Yes.
glad you're back at the Indian thing.
Right.
I remember one time you had someone drive. Did he work for Disney? And he drove
Oh yeah,
all
from
day
LA, I think.
to come to one of the meetings, and I forget what the meeting was about, but I was like, really? You're not going to actually stay overnight and visit here? And instead of driving all the way back to, he drove just for the day. And,
Right.
one of those, what did you say, 12,000 members now?
Yeah,
At the
1,200.
1,200, okay.
Yeah,
And I think
we're
at-
aiming for 12,000.
Yeah, I think at the time there was 1,000, so it's maybe last year that he came, but the meetings are always really great, and various speakers. What type of...
We've got a very interactive audience. So there's a lot of people, smart people that attend the audience. We're very interactive with the speaker. We've got folks that come and talk to us about batteries. We talk about electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, eVTOL, the new urban air mobility, different types of three-wheeled vehicles, and electric assist
I'm going to
bikes.
pull up the first slide, and I just got the 15-minute warning, so I guess we have to hurry up with the slides, but this is one of the meetings here at the bottom. And I don't remember how long ago this was, but this was really fun. This was a three-wheeled, it's a motorcycle class, and Archimoto was the name of the...
Archimoto out of
Archimoto.
Oregon, and that was probably
I think they just went
2016.
public. Like, they literally just went on the stock market, right?
Really?
Just went public.
Okay, great.
They were ringing the bell like 3 months ago.
It was because of the show,
It was because
it launched them.
because
right?
they came on my show too, right? So, and then there's a panorama of some of the folks there, and then the top one was literally like a week ago.
Correct.
And again, the third Thursday of every month. This was a great one. It was autonomous power racing.
Right.
We can pull that down. And yeah, so a variety, and you're always looking for speakers, right?
Absolutely. And the top picture on the slide there was Eiken Shoyoyi, and he sponsors this for like high schools to build their own autonomous racing vehicle. It's a Raspberry Pi operated controller. So it's something very easy. They use duct tape and lay out a race course on an open area.
And the purpose was to get kids involved,
Yeah.
instead of graduating high school and not having hands-on, to get them to learn how to do
Right.
things with their hands. How did you
Both-
start EVE? What was the spark?
Sure. So there's four major reasons, and one of them is just to help stop the gridlock, right? So right now, I mean, our NorCal freeways are becoming like SoCal freeways, that they're
Right.
becoming parking lots. So, we're consuming precious oil reserves, right? That's meant for our grandkids, and we're just idling. We're just idling the cars. If we're at least getting somewhere, I can live with that. But just
Wait, you
idling.
don't have grandkids yet, right?
Not yet, and
Okay,
I'm
but you do
in
have a
no
daughter,
hurry.
so,
I do have
yeah.
a daughter, yes. So the other part is just our time resource. That was not me. The other part was our time resource, and you were sitting in traffic, and that's a tremendous loss for productivity for companies and for our country. Another thing is national security, and then finally, just entrepreneurial, trying to bring better solutions.
That's a lot. That's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. I'm going to bring up a slide here, another slide. And so the next question is, what's going on in Silicon Valley? And this is just one of the maps. We have a couple maps that you gave me, but this is amazing. And then this, I believe, is an autonomous vehicle. What is this one on the left?
That's actually it is NVIDIA's autonomous racing vehicle. There are a couple of interesting new
and we
race
can
teams.
pull that down.
Racing leagues. One is electric, and in fact, in New York, they just did the Formula E race there with Formula cars. Look a lot like that one.
I think we might have a slide of that. Yeah.
In this case, it's pure electric racing vehicles, and that was a very important thing that Elon did. A lot of EVs were terminally boring to people. I mean, when Toyota, bless their heart, did their first hybrid Prius, it was a great car in many ways, and it's gone on to do famously well in sales. But it was one of those cars where you shouldn't have to take boredom that seriously when they launched it. Little skinny tires to get high fuel economy, and so you had
I
very.
honestly thought when you drove the Prius that it wouldn't go past 65 miles an hour, but it does.
Yeah, and,
It does. I haven't gotten a ticket yet.
and then
But
the other part about electric motors that they were neglecting in this fund is they launch instantly. Years ago, when the first GM EV, the EV1, came out, I had one in the Examiner's, one of our buildings with not a polished floor, but a cement floor. And, someone made the remark that, well, it's fine, but, it has no power. And I said, oh, yes, it does. So I got in it and literally burned rubber for about 4 feet across the.
Awesome.
And then I got yelled at for the next month by our plant people about damaging their floor. But, Elon, when he did the Model S, he just got rid of that paradigm all the way to ludicrous speed, which is very tough for gasoline engines to compete with right through to today. Before, if you wanted a sub 3 second to 60, imagine that. 1, 2, 3, you're at 60 from a dead stop. You had to have petrol engines with at least 1,200 horsepower. And you talk about using precious resources.
yeah.
Get a couple of electric motors, big battery, and off you go.
Let's pull up another slide. I think we're on slide 5 here. And so this is actually, that's an NVIDIA, we just got a tour with Western Automotive Journalist. That's one of their things that's running the autonomous vehicles, and they have a great program if people want to go check it out. They've got a place that you can go check out all their technology. The bottom is a map of companies working on autonomous vehicles, and I can't read this far away, but it's the self-driving on the right, and then I believe it might be a speaker that was at the Reinvents the Wheel last year or the year before. We can pull that down. So autonomous vehicles and what they're working on here in the Valley, there's just so many companies, right?
There are so many companies. In fact, there are too many, probably. There's going to be some sorting here. NVIDIA is very, very good at this, and they're good because they're a graphics company, and they they also build supercomputers the size of your laptop. It's pretty interesting. And the very first autonomous vehicle that was hanging around Silicon Valley was the big Touareg VW that had won the DARPA challenge, and Stanford and VW combined to build that car. When I got a little ride around Stanford University back, and this was in the 2000s, that car would do 15 miles an hour. It was very, very cautious. The entire back of this big SUV was filled with server racks. The entire roof was populated with LiDAR and radar. And so we go from there to my sitting in the right seat, and we'll see maybe a piece of it, in a fully level 5. Level 5 means fully autonomous vehicle. Wouldn't even have a steering wheel. This one did have a steering wheel because it's on public roads, has to have a human behind the steering wheel. But it was very interesting to look at where things had shrunk down to now. There's not what we call a chicken bucket on the roof. There aren't a bunch of LiDAR imaging cameras. Just simply, in this case, an Audi Q5. Where was all the hardware? Where the spare tire would have been.
Right in the back, yeah.
And that's a supercomputer sitting in there.
Let's pull up one more slide here, and then we're going to pull up a clip. So this is another one here showing us unbundling. Tell me about this really quick.
Well, it's I believe this is the vehicle with all of the different suppliers that it takes just to put all of the autonomous vehicle pieces together. And when I said there are too many people in the Valley working on that, you have all the major automakers plus all these other suppliers. The one group that's missing is Fiat Chrysler automobiles. And I think, and Sergio just left us this week, the former CEO and the guy that really saved Chrysler and put the company together, he believes that it was a fool's errand for a car maker to do their own autonomy. And he teamed with Waymo, Google, and I think he's made a reasonable bet. Now the problem is that the entire industry goes autonomous at some point. It's probably not going to be in our short lifetime, my short lifetime, maybe you guys. But
actually, it's funny because there was a clip I saw in the 80s on Murder, She Wrote, and they were talking about the cars that the computers were going to drive someday, right? They weren't calling it autonomous. We have 5 minutes left.
Yep.
So I'm going to pull up one of the clips really quick.
Sure.
Let's pull up the first one, which I think is Boeing. And
well, this is when I fly airplanes too. Now, I wasn't flying this plane. This is a Boeing 787 making an approach into Amsterdam. And the interesting thing about this is that when you think of autonomous driving, cars have to deal with pedestrians, bicycles, other traffic. In the air, all you have to do is deal with a controlled airspace and landing. So this literally, if you fly very often, chances are pretty good about every 5th landing you'll make may be fully autonomous, just testing the system. Now, these systems cost about $250,000 for the hardware on top of a $2 million flight deck in a $40 million airplane or more. So when you think about autonomous cars, if we could put $250,000 worth of equipment in a car, we could get to this level 5 pretty quickly, but we're a ways away from that.
so in the few short minutes we have left, what's the biggest changes you've seen in the auto industry and electric vehicles, and let's start with you.
So I just was up in Oregon flying helicopters, taking pilot lessons up there. So for me, I really love aerospace, and the combination of EVs with the urban air mobility and eVTOLs is exciting. I don't know how practical it is. There's a lot of regulations and safety issues, but I remember somebody mentioning 5 years ago that this is what they saw as the big future, and I thought that they were a little too futuristic. But it's coming, and it's going to have a function somewhere, whether it's emergency police vehicles or VIPs, but it is coming, so I'm looking forward, and that's where our club is pivoting towards, the eVTOL.
And let's bring up the next 2 slides really quick. Let's bring up the next 2. So here, This is autonomous vehicles. We were just talking about Audi. This is another thing here. And
The
of
Audi
course,
at the top is actually on a racetrack, fully autonomous driving a racetrack. And then there are people movers like the one down on the left-hand side. And I think that third one may be the car that got in a little
wreck.
kerfuffle.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's that debate too, the safety. Let's pull up the next slide really quick. And here, levels of autonomy, and it shows you the various levels.
And when Tesla talks about their autopilot, if you go to the third one from the left, it's kind of like the human scale of Cro-Magnon. The guy is finally erect and going across to full Homo sapiens.
And we might as well just go to the next slide now, because we got a couple more. And then here, this is actually, we were talking about it, NVIDIA. That's the supercomputer on the left. And on the top was their presentation talking about self-driving. And then the bottom, I believe, was also part of their autonomy. So we can pull that down. And yeah, so really quickly, we've got a couple minutes left. What's the biggest change you've seen?
I think the acceleration of the change is what we're going to see, and we're already seeing it. So Tesla was pretty much by itself in making a cool EV. Now Jaguar's I-Pace is actually in dealerships. The Chevy Volt, bad name, Bolt, but B-O-L-T, Bravo Bolt. So we're starting to see, and we'll see a lot more soon, really cool electric vehicles, combination hybrid vehicles, as well as some autonomous features that we have now. You know, you can do dynamic cruise control, which used to be an option only on luxury cars. Buy a $16,000, if you can find one car, and chances are it might even have something like autonomous cruise control and auto braking.
I think we have 2 more slides. If we can just show those really quick, we'll pop them up on the screen. And so this was the flying thing we were talking about. I pulled up a couple things, the quads, a couple things that are coming up. And the other one was the speaker. And then this was a slide that you had timeline of the future. People want to see it. We can post that. We can pull that down. I'm getting the wrap up. Thank you so much. So I was going to ask if we could do an event, SVTAGS, EV, Western Automotive Journalist. We like to do events. Part of what we want to do is educate the public. So let's make that happen. And I think we need to have you guys on the show, because we only have you back on the show. We only did a couple of the questions. We didn't get through them all. And I'm getting the close. So to the audience, thank you for watching us. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, SVTAGS, Facebook, Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability. Make this a great tax week by conserving, reusing, and rethinking the way that you choose to live here in Silicon Valley and beyond. Thank you. And thank you for joining me, you guys.
Thanks, Heather.